There's a part of me that so respects the intricacy of the human being, our existence. We are so mysterious. We are so complex. And every time scientists think they've got it nailed, it's all buttoned up, and they think they understand everything there is to understand, they understand that they don't know what's really happening. Human brain states is a perfect example. We can talk about that in just a moment. So I think until we fully understand who we are and our potential, it's a mistake.
Right. Because we're closing off that door. We might not ever go back there.
We're giving it away. It's a mistake to lose that.
50 years from now, there'll be the science fiction movie of the people that stayed away from the tech and the people that went into the tech.
I think it's happening right now. That's exactly what you're seeing. And if some people go to extremes, I think the machines can be useful as tools. My caution is not to embrace them as a crutch, where we have to have them.
Right.
If a machine can tell me when I'm creating the conditions in my body to access this potential, then that machine is very useful. Once I understand that, I can toss the machine away. I don't need the gadget, because now I know who I am. If I feel like I need the machine to take me to this place every time, so I have a bad day or I'm a little stressed, and I say, I got to hook up to my machine, my PC, and run this app to tell me when I'm in the right brain state or whatever, the right heart state or whatever it is. And I think that's where we run the risk, and we have to be conscious. We have to be conscious and cautious as we do this. And I'm tripping on a little bit because I wanted to go back. I'm not slighting Elon Musk. He is of a different generation than we are. He's an entrepreneur. He's done amazing things. He sees potential, and he says, let's explore this potential. And so he probably is accelerating the evolution, wherever that evolution is going to go. We have to make a choice now, where we didn't have to make it 5 years ago. Now we have to choose, are we going to follow this path? Now I have to tell you, Brian, audiences all over the world, when I share this story, and I've got a presentation that goes with it, and before I even share my opinion, I can see people in the audience, and when they see the picture of the chip, I say, here's the chip, here's what it does, and people are out there, they're shaking their heads. And then when I say, in my opinion, this is a dangerous thing to do, it's a slippery slope, I think we may not want to go here, people stand up and they applaud.
Yeah.
People, at least in the ilk that we're communicating with, believe that there is we're pushing a boundary, and it's a boundary they don't want to cross.
Yeah, but I would also argue that with the power of technology companies and of ease and our natural human tendencies, that 50 years from now, most of the world will be going in that direction. Unless, and that's probably a reality. I read an article recently about how Sweden is going into like a cashless society, and it mentioned a statistic that I found that blew me away, and I think it's right. It said something like 5% of the population have a chip embedded in their hand.
I was just going to say that.
For contactless travel.
It's not just in Sweden. I've seen this. I was just at the airport in Dallas. I saw it at the Dallas DFW airport, Dallas, Texas, United States.
Okay.
And there was I was in line to purchase a bottle of water, and the man in front of me was buying water and snacks. And I was watching him. I'm very aware of my environment, and I expect him to pull out like a debit card. And all he did was he went like this over the scanner, and that was it.
With his arm.
With his arm. It was his wrist. Wrist over the scanner. It rang up. He didn't have to sign anything. And I thought, what the hell is that?
It's happening.
I actually said this in my breath. I thought, what the hell is that? You know, because I knew we do this in some military bases and military operations, and we certainly do with our pets, RFID chips and things like that to identify pets, but I hadn't seen it in a commercial application in an airport.
And that's what's interesting about you, Greg, as opposed to a lot of, not people in your field, because you're very unique, but you have this background in science, in the defense industry as well. So you've really seen a lot of things a lot of other people haven't.
Yeah, I'm not supposed to talk about it.
I know, but it gives you a very interesting perspective and a lot of credibility when it comes to a lot of these things.
Well, thank you, Brian, but I will say this, and this is another part of where this conversation goes. I was working during the Cold War years in the defense industry, and the project was called SDI, it was Star Wars Defense Initiative. And these are very complex devices that we were building, even back in the 80s, space-based lasers, high-intensity lasers, and the communications and the radar that was there. Yeah. And complex as all of those things are, Brian, I've never seen anything built in the engineering laboratory that does not mimic something that we already are within our bodies. And this is where it really comes home for me. The average human has around whatever average is. They say the average human body has about 50 trillion, give or take, cells. 50 trillion cells. Every one of those cells is essentially an electrical circuit. Every one of those cells transmits energy. Every cell receives energy. Every cell has capacitance, capacitors, resistors, transistors. We broadcast. we detect light. We emit light, photons. All of the things that we are building in our machines, we already do in our cells. And when you think about regulating, if each cell does that, and you have 50 trillion of those cells, when you learn to regulate, to harmonize and synchronize the cells in a very, very precise way, and this is the key to the mystical traditions and to the ancient, the healers that we see and that I've studied, and the shamans and things like that, it's self-regulation, using the mind and the heart to self-regulate these cells. And then you begin to realize all the machines that we're building are telling us something about us. They are reflecting to us who we are. And this, I'm beating around the bush because it all comes back to a story a Native American man shared with me. I was hiking through an archaeological site in northern New Mexico, Chaco Canyon, if you know where Chaco Canyon is, in the Four Corners area of northern New Mexico, and I met a Native man, and he shared with me a story, and the story was about what we're talking about right now. And he said, a long time ago, the world was very different, and people lived close to the earth, and they remembered who they are, and he said, something happened. And even the elders don't know exactly what it was, but he said, people got lost. The people of the earth became lost. They forgot who they are, and they became lonely, and they so long for that deep connection again that they began to build machines outside of their body that mirror what they are inside to remind them of who they are. He said, we're part of that world, and we will continue to build a more and more complex outer world until we wake up and remember that everything out there is telling us who we are, and then we let that world go because we have become the sophisticated technology within. Mm-hmm. And I think about that a lot.
It's interesting. So this is part of the process, perhaps.
Yeah, and I think there's probably a lot of truth in what the man said to me.
Interesting. A few things came to mind. So I worked at a place called the Aerospace Corporation. I think I told you around 91. And so a few of my colleagues were working, I think, on something called the Brilliant Eyes Project, which was a bit of SDI.
Yes.
And so, again, I thought you were going to bring it out because Brilliant Eyes, I was actually trying to kind of mimic a lot of these human characteristics to look at the plumes for these, missiles and things like that. So that was interesting. Also, I thought of the old movie Logan's Run, which I'm sure you remember.
I remember it very well. Yeah.
And for people that don't know, you got to go watch it. But it was this, if I think about it now, I look at it as a society that was kind of plugged into this matrix because they all had a light that beeped on their palm, and it was all about you only had a certain